Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen and Oliver Show. We are a number of episodes in now, and we've got a really interesting one, which we are titling Caution, Expert Advice, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, explanation mark, question mark, explanation mark. So over to you, Stephen. You brought this one to my attention. Hit me with it.
Well, it's. I can't wait to talk about this. It's been one of those things that's been bugging me over. Well, it's been on the agenda actually all year, but I think in the last few months it's kind of gathered a lot of momentum. And many of you may have read in the media about Stephen Bartlett and his show, The Diary of a CEO, his podcast. And basically, the debate is around the expert advice that's been given on that particular show and whether or not that expert advice is correct. Which has led me to sort of think, do we have a duty of care the moment we're giving information out that potentially can be used? Do we have a duty of care to make sure that information is correct? Especially when we're not saying it's our thoughts or what we've learned over a number of years, when we're saying, actually, we believe this to be true. And this has been around nutrition in particular, so I'll label it around nutrition. But I'm not an expert on nutrition, so I'm not going to start talking about whether I believe that Stephen Bartlett's guests are right or wrong. But clearly, people believe that some of the things that have been said on his show are not right and have been checked and verified as not being right. My point that I want to stress is, do we have a duty of care when we're talking in a public forum to make sure that the information we're giving, bearing in mind that people are going to take that information, run with it, and potentially use it? So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, yeah, so it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I've often taken the view about people who sort of say a certain thing about themselves. So I often have this phrase that I use that if people have to say it, then it probably isn't so, when it's talking about how great they are and how successful they are. But actually, to be fair to you, I'd never really thought about it from the point of view of experts not being truthful. Not necessarily deliberately misleading, but I would hazard a guess that often deliberately misleading. And that just takes you to a different angle, because we're talking about a specific podcast and there's a specific one getting flack, rightly or wrongly. I've not heard the episode that you're referring to. But it's a wider thing, isn't it? It's not just about podcasts. It's about manipulation of information or putting things out there as your opinions as facts or just your beliefs as facts and things like that, which is going to be quite dangerous. So I suppose what's the learning here? What's the lesson? I suppose the first thing is to be caution if you are that individual and you're not sure of your facts and you're spouting them. Your opinions are being put out there as facts. There's a lot of that going on at the moment, especially on social media. It seems to be getting worse and worse and worse because, all right, your main view, if you're doing it on social media, is to get followers and likes and comments, and all engagement's good engagement. We hear that quite a lot. But in actual fact, your point, are you considering what impact that might be having on other people? My head tells me you're probably not aware of some of the impacts that might well be having on people. So that's the first thing. The second thing, if you're on the other side and you're consuming this information, let's think about it carefully. I mean, I'm going to put one out there, which is definitely going to get me in some grief, but Andrew Tate is a perfect example. There's a lot of people that hear what he says and believe it to be true. And I mean, the absolute crock of crap that comes out of that man's mouth most of the time, probably segmented with some elements of truth. But ultimately, I would challenge people in those scenarios to ask, are you just looking for the answers you want to hear, which then given by someone who's not basing anything that he's suggesting much in fact at all, but it sits comfortably with how you feel or how you think, you're actually then converting that into fact, whereas actually it's just a very troubled individual using platforms in a very negative way, but it doesn't necessarily sit uncomfortably with the way you feel about yourself. And there's an opportunity then to self-reflect, and perhaps you resonating with something that's not very pleasant is an opportunity for you, not necessarily publicly, I'm not suggesting that, but for you to privately and inwardly just have a little think about what's going on in your head and why you feel like you agree with these sorts of people. And perhaps it's unfair of me to pick on that particular individual because there's quite a few out there. But, you know, if you're warming towards fairly radical thinking, there needs to be a little bit of internalization for me. Yeah. So I think it comes with two things. Yes, duty of care on the beholder of the person who maybe has the influence and is putting those ideas out there. But I think there's also a duty of care of the listener, of the follower, of the consumer, to not believe everything you bloody listen to and read and see and hear. I mean, the level of, I'll go a little bit further and say the level of seemingly stupid people that aren't stupid, but just seem to follow along stuff because I don't know the reason, actually, is quite alarming to me. One of the things I can give as a much more lighter example, although the experiences aren't that light, I sponsor a local football fan channel called Talk Norwich City. I'm a Norwich City fan from my troubles. It's not going great this season. And as a result of that, we hear some very angry people who chip in on some of the feeds, and they say some disgustingly toxic stuff. But they then get other people who jump on the bandwagon. Now, bearing in mind, Jack and Chris Reeve won't mind me saying that they've both lost parents young. And some people, regardless of their views on them, regardless of their thoughts on football, some people think it's okay to comment, negatively of course, on the loss of their parents. I mean, and then other people weigh in, and you're just like, wow. So where is that coming from? And I think what we tend to do really well in that environment is we police it quite well by not banning them, but we reach out to these people. And the honest truth is, when we reach out to them and say, wow, you know, life must be pretty damn awful for you if you feel the need to say stuff like that, what we tend to find is not every time, but more often than not, we make an intervention. And we now have regular fans and followers of the channel who had initially started their interactions by saying some pretty ugly stuff. But it wasn't from a position of fact. It wasn't from a position of truth. It was from a position of their life was bad and they were venting and they felt they had an outlet, but it wasn't actually making them better. So your point is absolutely of interest to me specifically, but it also leads me down a few other paths. So I've veered off and on and off and on, but where's that taken you, my ramblings?
Well, the first thing I thought was, I think it's important, and you know, if Stephen Bartlett is listening to our podcast, to say, I think it's important that when the guests are on the show, that they make it clear that that's their opinion. And I think there's a clear distinction to say that's my opinion, and then this is my personal expert advice, or based on X survey done on blah blah blah, this is the information. So that way it's a little bit more, the listener can then decide where they take it. The unfortunate thing is, if you've got millions and millions of people listening to your podcast, there's going to be some of those people that take everything literally. So you're not going to be able to, you know, police or veer everyone away. But I think it's stating when something's factual versus something's someone's opinion. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I'd like to say to people is, do your own research. You know, don't be lazy. You know, we consume so much information all the time. Don't be lazy and go, yeah, I've heard that, so that must be right. Go and do your own research. Go and look into it yourself. You know, go and do your own due diligence. Go and make sure, you know, is this right for me? If someone's talking about nutrition and various things, and, you know, go and do your own research. I mean, Oliver knows, you know, I take my health very seriously. And as I've got older, I've, you know, really focused in on what I eat and my exercise and my training and everything else. And, you know, I've looked into fads over the years and different things. And it always comes back to one thing with food. And that is, if you want to lose weight, then you have to be in a calorie deficit. However you get that calorie deficit is up to you, but you have to be in one to lose weight. You cannot lose weight any other way. And, you know, I think, unfortunately, because there's so much stuff out there which people are consuming information, and people go, well, I'm not going to eat any carbs, and I'm only going to eat protein, and I'm going to drink, you know, 10,000 litres of water a day. I'm going to do this. I'm sorry, that was just me over elaborating, but I don't want anyone to drink 10,000 litres of water. You know, and they go on and go on and go on. But you have to do your own research. And then also, what I'd like to say to people is, everyone's mind is different. Everyone's body is different. We are unique for a reason. Just because one thing works for one person doesn't necessarily mean it works for another person. What I am saying, the overall arching thing on nutrition is, you can eat anything that you want in moderation. And that's the thing I've learned for me. And that's my opinion. I'm not giving you that as expert advice. I'm just saying my opinion is I can eat anything I like, but I have to eat it in moderation. I know to lose weight, I need to be in a calorie deficit. That's either by training harder or by eating less. And I just think, just be mindful, especially the younger people out there that are consuming this information. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting because where that takes me to is something that's recently happened in our lives, and I cue the boos that are about to come. I can hear them coming down. But so we're a plant-based family. My family's, yes, vegan, but I don't tend to use that terminology too often because it seems to generate more boos. But this is what's going to cause the boos. We have 3 dogs, and I can hear it already for most people. Now, those dogs have been following a plant-based diet for 3 years, and it came to a head recently when somebody challenged us on that. But they challenged it on it based on their opinion and not on facts, because we've done a lot of research. I also have a cat. That cat is not on a plant-based diet. I had the cat before we made the decision to go this way, and I've done the research, and I know that that would be very detrimental to the cat's health. I am also very aware that the diet that I'm putting my dogs in gives them everything that they need. But I've done my research and I've checked it very thoroughly. It was a very difficult decision that we came to when we made that decision. But 3 years later, we have very healthy dogs in great shape, not putting on too much weight. Kind of the evidence is there. And for someone to just come and say that, oh, well, you can't feed a dog effectively a vegan diet, not true. Okay, it's just simply not true. You have to be careful. You have to research what you give them. You have to make sure that it's not any old thing. But they are not just carnivores, but the point is not to try and defend that, because there will definitely be people listening here I can see, oh, it's ridiculous, I've never listened to this show again. Fair enough, but you've just done exactly what we're encouraging you not to do. But the point is, the attack that came onto us was not backed up with anything bar an opinion and a feeling and a vibe. And it's great to have strong feelings. I understand why people wouldn't agree with it. And if you come at me with a load of facts as to why that's not a good thing, I would definitely consider it. All the evidence and research that I have done has proven that this is not a bad decision. And I'm doing it from just a point of view that, I care about animals. So it's purely an animal thing. It's not really about my health. That's an added bonus. But I can see where the frustration other people come with, but I would love them to be more considerate in how they go about that. Because if the individual concern had raised it as a concern and say, I'm worried about the health of your dogs, I love that. I love that that person cares about my dog and its well-being. And I would love the opportunity to put that person's mind at ease, or not necessarily at ease, but just to reassure them that it's not just a blasé thing we've done, so it's trendy. This is a lifestyle that we've chosen, and the dogs, like the cat, were along before we made this change. So it wouldn't have been appropriate to have changed their lifestyle based on our views if it was unhealthy for them. Henceforth, why the cat's still on meat. Simple. So it comes everywhere, doesn't it? So it's great that there's a podcast out there that gets a lot of traction, that's getting some flack for this, because at the bare minimum, there should be, if they haven't done it, because I say I haven't seen or listened to it, they should have put disclaimer, not our views, or not substantiated, or we don't support this is just them saying what they think. That individual concern should also be saying, this is my study or my views or my opinion and so forth. And it's quite risky, and it's the interesting dilemma that we get now, that we don't have mainstream media in charge of a lot of stuff. There's lots of positives, but mainstream media have to substantiate. They always put disclaimer after, you know it, don't you? There's so many disclaimers. They warn you about strobe lighting coming in, all for good reasons. They warn you about sensitive things you might be about to view. Don't get that. Go on Twitter. You don't get a warning most of the time about the goddamn awful stuff that you're about to see. In fact, I wouldn't mind a little bit of a warning sometimes. So we are in that scenario. So it seems like it's a more of an ethical choice these days, although I expect maybe there are some legal ramifications for an organisation that size, because people might come after you. But it's really quite an interesting debate that seems to be flying around, that I was absolutely, it's gone over my head. I had no idea this was happening, but Stephen was telling me all about it beforehand, and it gets you thinking, doesn't it?
It does. And again, there's 2 things here. One is the person giving the advice to be clear about saying that it's their opinion. And then I think the other side to it is the person listening to it, don't believe everything that you hear. And I know that's cheap coming from you guys when you're asking us to listen to what you're saying. But what I'm saying is do your research, go and find out for yourself. And just, don't take everything as gospel. We're not in this, I can guarantee you, we're not in this for likes. That's for sure. We the very nature of our podcast, SOS, is we want to help people. We want to give people snippets of information that they can use in their everyday life. And the snippet of information today really is don't believe everything that you hear. Go and do your own research. And then to people that are doing podcasts, have a little think about the duty of care for the information that you're giving out and what you're saying. How close is it to the truth? And can those people take that information, run with it, and actually lead a better life? And I think that's, for me, that's what it's all about. And it is so emotive because when you've got 1.5 million listeners, not everyone's going to be able to work out what they should be looking at and what they shouldn't look at. They're just going to look at all of it. Some people will make that, will be able to subtract and do that, but some people won't. And especially some of the younger listeners. This is one of my issues is, we have, and listen, I'm going to say it. I believe we have a duty of care when we're talking in the public domain to make sure that the advice that we're giving is good advice, and that we're clear that it's our opinion. And if it's advice that's substantiated with data, then we should be able to give that data, even if it's in the notes, even it's there, but we should be able to do that. So then people can make an informed decision.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think just as a final thought from me, I mentioned it earlier, and I want to make sure it's just not lost, because if you hear this, even if you don't like it, it will sit with you. And if you are choosing to believe stuff without researching it because it sits well with you, that is poor. All right, because that means that maybe some of the things that you align to and you believe in are not substantiated with any fact. And I'm not suggesting that the full facts are out there. Some of these things are divisive, but do you have to have a position? Do you have to have a side, or can you just make a consideration? I think far too often we seem to have to align to something. There's plenty of things recently where there's one side or the other side that we can think about. I don't mention any of them here, but they're very clear. Do you have to? Could you not say, a little bit of A, a little bit of B, not too sure, or maybe just stick down the middle and take in all sides of the argument? And therefore, if you're quick to go to one view, are you just looking for stuff that just reinforces your belief rather than supports things based on facts? And I'd really challenge you to hear that loudly, because I feel that there are a lot of people, and there is more worry for me with the younger generation, but it's not exclusive in any way, shape or form. So just be sure that you're not just trying to consume what you want to consume and believe what you want to believe rather than some facts. So I think it's dangerous. So that's it from me. Any final one-liners you want to add to that?
Yeah, Stephen Bartlett, if you're listening and you want to come and challenge me on this podcast, by all means, come and talk to me. In the main, I think I want it to be said that I think you have created a great platform for people to be able to talk, and that platform has grown. But I do believe you do have a duty of care to make sure that your guests on your show giving information that potentially people are going to take and use is right, and if it's their opinion, then they make it clear.
Yeah, here. So I 100% support that view, and I think that will do in that case. So Stephen Bartlett, you know where we are, and we may even tag you in and see what we get out of that. But I expect you're probably getting enough flack as it is from what I'm hearing. So I hope you've all enjoyed that. I hope that's got you thinking. And as always, if you want to have a conversation with either of us, you know where we are. You're easy to get hold of on our various social media platforms, and we'll be happy to talk. So until the next one, stay safe.